Welcome to Below the Forest Floor. My name is Nancy and I'm here with my husband / co-host Ryan.
Hello.
Today we are going to be talking about the cult urban legend, the Melon Heads. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the creatures known as Melon Heads, imagine, if you will, a small childlike person roaming through the woods in the depth of night. Though this is no ordinary child, these mutated creatures sport massive heads with disfigured bodies. They run feral, attacking any passerby that may enter their vicinity. With a horrific past and sordid future, these are the Melon Head origins. Ryan, have you ever heard of the Melon Heads?
I have, and I keep forgetting about it whenever we're going to talk about, talking about whatever we want to do next.
Mm-hmm.
I keep forgetting about the Melon Heads, and when you'd said something about it, it kicked all the stuff off in my brain that I remember about it. Like, oh, okay, if you haven't heard about it, it's like it's gonna be insane. So I was excited to get into this one.
And I honestly didn't know that you knew anything about it, because what I usually do is I'll ask Ryan, hey, what ideas do you have for the next episode? And that usually causes him to blank out. Then I just go and look up my own list of urban legends and creatures and see what I haven't done yet.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read the word Melon Heads, I was like, this sounds like a very mean name to call someone. What is this about? I honestly thought it was about aliens at first.
And that's one of the things that, just hearing about it, you think of, the gray aliens and such.
Yeah, because they have humongous heads. They are really little weird looking creatures, but I guess I was completely wrong, because it was something that was not exactly what I thought it would be, but it was also very obvious, if you know what I mean.
And it was so popular for a while that they made a movie about it too.
They made 2 movies, actually.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. I knew about the first one.
Yeah, the one movie about the Melon Heads is about them, but the second movie they made is about the guy who experimented on them. So it doesn't really talk about them.
They're like quote unquote father.
Yeah. So something I thought was interesting is that there are several places in the US that lay claim to the Melon Heads and their lore. Each story different than the last, but all with one thing in common.
And one of the states is absolutely not unexpected.
Oh my god.
It's just thought I was like, it would be. This folklore would be from this state.
The description always mentions a small humanoid creature with a bulbous head that lives in the woods and eats human flesh. They are said to roam the woods of Ohio, Connecticut, and Michigan, striking terror in the hearts of lost hikers. I read one story that mentioned that they were also found in New England, but it was very little information, so I couldn't really do a whole thing on it. But
yeah, it's few and far between when it comes to that one, but there's a very few stories that have actually talked about that way. So
yeah, that's why I was like, I just wanted to let y'all know I did see that. There wasn't enough information for me to be like, yeah, I have to add it to this. So their diets usually consist of small woodland creatures, but if hungry enough, they have been known to consume people. And I was absolutely terrified when I read that, because these are technically people and they are out here eating the peoples.
Yeah, all Sons of the Forest style.
Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, what if they got some inspiration from this?
It could be. This story also, the Melon Head story in general, kind of tiny bits of it did pull from some of the cannibal stories just in general also.
That's true, because I've looked it up and there aren't that many cannibal stories in the US, so I guess we had to have one. And this was ours. So in some stories, they hide in small villages that they have created over time. So they're basically their own group of people. And they're pretty smart, but not really. Some people are like, oh, they only eat the small woodland creatures. They don't even cook them. They just eat them raw. And it's like, I'm talking about it right now because I don't mention it later in the stories. But I thought it was really weird. It's like, okay, so they're smart enough to make the whole little societies that are hidden forever, but they don't know how to cook the food they're finding. They just go out and eat whatever's there.
Lord of the Flies. Well, not really, because that was actually
No,
kind
even
of.
those kids ate. They cooked their food. They ate. They weren't.
Yeah,
They were out
but
there doing their best.
I think it might not be necessarily like that they don't know how to. I think it's just because they just didn't want to. Also,
But that's. I don't get it. It's disgusting, but. I would not, but whatever. To each their own.
cannibals be cannibals.
They be cannibalizing. So, in some stories, when they hide out and stuff and people come too close to their little villages, that's when they're like, get them. And they attack the people and they start eating them, or they try to scare them away, which I can see why that would be a thing they would want to do, because I would not want somebody to bother me when I'm trying to stay in all day. Although they are quite interesting, they're also very disturbing. We
She
started.
attacks people with sticks whenever they come up to our house and knock on the door or something.
You know what? I don't need sticks because I have dogs and they lick people so much they get really annoyed and leave themselves.
That's fair.
My dogs just love so much. So we start our journey through the history of the Melon Heads in the state of Ohio, because that has been such a popular topic recently. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Ohio memes, only in Ohio. But I was like, oh gosh, of course we would find a story with Ohio. Here we find the small town of Kirtland, where people have claimed to have spotted tonight's subject. The lore in this area claims that back in the 1970s, a group of young orphan children were adopted by a mad scientist named Dr. Crow. Crow used these children as lab rats and experimented on them, causing their heads to swell to unbelievable sizes, mutating them. Their heads became so large, in fact, that the people of the town began to tease them and make fun of them, and they would make up names like the Melon Heads. The experiments in their treatment by the scientists became so unbearable that the children set the home where they were imprisoned ablaze, killing the scientist and his wife. The children scurried deep into the woods, creating their own community. The area in which they are said to dwell eventually became the woods behind Wisner Road. Unfortunately, because they had little to no contact with the outside world, years of inbreeding occurred, causing the new generation of Melon Heads to become more disfigured and mentally unstable than those that came before them. They are filled with rage and not afraid to hurt those who approach them.
And some accounts actually claim that the kids, when they were found, they were already suffering from hydrocephalus, which is the fluid in the fluid in the brain, fluid in the head.
I do have some stuff that I'm going to mention about that later that I thought was really interesting.
And that he had possibly injected even more fluid into the brain.
Which, why? Like, okay, what experiment are you running, sir, that you're doing this? What is your theory? What are you trying to do? It sounds like you're just being a jerk. Because usually there's like a point to doing science like this.
Yeah, there is, but it's not like ethical.
Yeah. Another version of this tragic tale insists that the children they weren't even alive. In this retelling, Dr. Crow and his wife they were actually really nice people. They were lovely. And they took in the children that the government left in the woods to die, because in this story, the government did the experiments and caused their heads to enlarge. And so the Dr. Crow and his wife are like, we can't let these kids out here just die in the wilderness. They cared for the children as if they were their own, but unfortunately they were like really old in age, so Mrs. Crow eventually passed away. This caused a horrific distress in the mutated children, and they ran amok within the home, causing a kerosene lamp to come crashing down and started a fire. That would end up taking their lives and Dr. Crow's lives, and everyone went with it. So it is said that it is the spirits of the children that now haunt the very woods that we spoke of earlier, rather than their descendants.
Oh, yeah.
That was a more depressing one.
Which all of these ones really are.
They're not fun. This one is more sad, but I wasn't expecting that it was ghosts, honestly, because another thing that I read that has to do with these ghost ones is that in Ohio, there's a bridge near these woods called Crybaby Bridge, and they say the crying sounds come from these kids, the Melon
Oh,
Heads.
they're trying to put the Crybaby Bridge with okay.
Yeah. I didn't know if I was going to add it into this because it was like,
Well, it's interesting.
it's interesting, but it felt very much like the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe coming together. But it's like
Right.
all cryptids.
America's supernatural universe.
Oh my gosh. Crossover we didn't imagine.
Crossover nobody wanted.
Don't start me because I'm going to be like, you know what? The Melon Heads are always hanging out in the woods. Have they met Bigfoot? I'm just saying. Did Bigfoot give them tips on how to hide?
Oh my god, there you go. And there were Bigfoot sightings in Ohio.
Were there now?
I believe so.
Oh.
The other two states not so much, but I believe there was some in Ohio.
Okay, we'll talk about that later because we always have that end of the segment of the show where we talk about our own personal theories.
Yeah.
So we'll put that in my noggin, Rian, so I don't forget.
Right.
So we now go back a bit further in time to the colonial era of Trumbull, Connecticut. So we've moved away from Ohio. We're in Connecticut now. Back when Trumbull was known as Stratford, in a time when you could be accused of witchcraft by upsetting the wrong people, which is exactly what happened to a young family in this town. They were banished from the town and told to never return. They didn't say why. For fear of not surviving, the family did leave, but not too far from where they were outcasted. So they hid in the woods nearby where they had originally lived, and they started growing their family to create their own community. Unfortunately, it was between families, so it was a lot of inbreeding again, and it caused a mass amount of mental health and physical issues, which created manifesting in rage fits and oversized craniums, and people would make fun of them, those who would spot them, calling them Melon Heads, and anyone from the town that was nearby would be told, don't go out into the woods at night because that's where the Melon Heads lived and they'll hurt you, so on and so forth. And they ended up becoming an urban legend to scare kids from going, out in the middle of the night. But that was it. That was it for Connecticut. They were people accused of witchcraft, and then they inbred a bunch till they had giant heads.
Connecticut has a history of crazy things in the past as well.
What do you mean?
Because you mentioned the witch thing.
Yeah.
There were witch trials in Connecticut as well. Not as famous as Salem or anything like that. But granted, there were around that time there were witch hunts going on everywhere. But
yeah,
along the eastern shore, especially up north, I do remember hearing about a lot of different stories that were coming around when discussing witches and stuff like that with friends growing up, and I had a couple of books from the library that was on stuff like that.
Right. And the thing is, I wanted to make sure that this was even remotely true because I wanted to make sure all of the time stamps they lined up because it's at the colonial era, and so I was like, okay, were there even witch hunts in the colonial era? So I looked it up, and yes, there were. And Trumbull, Connecticut did technically exist during that time, but it was known as Stratford. But technically, all of this bits, it's historically accurate for the time and the place and the existence of, because, you want to look it up and it's like, this place never actually existed and people made it up, or it didn't exist back then, or this was not during a time of witch trials. It's technically historically accurate, but there was no documentation that a family was outcasted from Stratford and was never seen again.
Yeah. One other thing, when we were talking about the whole, I wonder if, Bigfoot had any connection to them and stuff. Bigfoot doesn't have a connection with them, but like I said about because I looked up some popular cryptids from Ohio, right? Melon Heads is on there definitely, but so is Bigfoot. Bigfoot is on the list.
Oh God.
And some of these ones that are on here are some that are interesting enough for you could probably make a podcast episode on a few of these.
Really?
Mothman.
I did a Mothman episode.
I know. What I'm saying is like because Mothman was a big one there too, but Frogman. Apparently, it's seemingly peaceful.
Okay. So I heard
it spun a musical
what?
in 2014 and a novel.
So I did hear about Frogman when I was looking up the Melon Heads, and I was going to bring it up to you.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was going to bring it up to you in private.
Frog. I
was going to bring it up to you in private, but now that you mentioned it on the podcast, because I was going to be like, "Do you want to do another weird one next week or next month?" And I was going to ask if you want to do one on Frogman.
Sure. Like look in the little synopsis here. It's seemingly peaceful, no known attacks. Hell yeah.
Okay, guys, seems like next month we're doing the episode on Frogman. Honestly, I don't know if there's like a lot of information. If there's not, maybe we should do one on like amphibious human-like creatures.
Either that, or we can go through some of the popular ones that are in Ohio.
I was going to say, or we could, oh my God, get out of my brain. Because I was about to say we could go through just like all of the Ohio cryptids. We should do like, the season 5 should be all cryptids, but like from different states. Like
like a top 5 or a top 6. Or we can do 2 or 3 like really famous ones and 2 and 3 obscure that maybe you don't know about.
I like that. Okay. I'll write that down after we finish filming this episode, so remind me.
I gotcha.
Okay, so up next we are going to Michigan, where we find the final dwelling area of the mysterious Melon Heads. Okay, so Michigan's is interesting because there are stories that date back to witnesses that have been around for a while. So I'll get us started with, in 2016, the local Channel 3 News of Saugatuck, Michigan, did an investigation on a series of monsters, including the Melon Heads. Yeah. They mentioned that although many residents of the area claim that the Melon Heads come from some sort of asylum, research shows that no such building ever existed in the area. They even brought in a historian from the area, and they were like, no, there was never an asylum here, but there was a humongous mansion.
It was also once a prison.
Yes, the prison I did see.
I was going to say, because there was no asylum. Because I saw something right now about the Historical Society mentioning that the asylum never existed.
Yeah.
But it was at one point a prison, so...
Yeah. But these are supposed to be kids, so I went with the mansion, because it's like, that would make no sense that they're a bunch of kids that came from a big prison.
Well, at one point a prison, it was turned into a mansion.
Oh, so it's the same thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. But a fairly large mansion was there, and people claimed that this mansion, called Felt Mansion, was where
it was near... Sorry, it was near Felt Mansion.
Gotcha. But people claimed that Felt Mansion was where the Melon Heads had originated from, eventually making their way towards the woods. Stories of these small mysterious creatures date back to the 1950s, with some residents claiming that even back then they could see glowing eyes staring at them from the woods. It is said that the Melon Heads are hidden beneath tunnels that lead into the woods from the Felt Mansion residents, and they only come out at night to scare or feast on lost hikers in the area.
Ooh.
It's like, okay, first of all, I'm wondering, why are there tunnels? Are the tunnels real? Has anybody tried to go look? Everyone too scared to go into the mansion? Have they made up a story for the mansion saying that you can't go in because it's falling apart, maybe, so that keeps people from going in there?
So, I was just doing a little bit of searching while you were saying that part. The Felt Mansion, 12,000 plus square foot mansion featuring 25 rooms, 3 floors, and a one-of-a-kind ballroom. You can take tours of it now.
Really?
People have gotten... they've hosted weddings.
Ugh.
Seasonal events, touring the mansion and the grounds.
I'm sorry, but
It's in West Michigan also.
I would not like to start off my married life in a place where giant headed people monster things are said to be found in the middle of the night. No, thank you. That is terrifying. And the story from Michigan and this place doesn't mention them having big heads. It just talks about them being cannibals. So it feels like this is more like a cannibal story.
I read something about, let me see if I can get back to it.
Yeah, because when I was reading through this part with the Michigan incident, I was like, how did they get big heads?
There was a story or two from the Michigan side of things that did say that they were originally children with hydrocephalus.
Okay. All right, well.
Yeah, who lived at the Junction Insane Asylum near Felt Mansion. I'm just going off the wiki right now.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
The story explains that after enduring physical and emotional abuse, they became feral and were released into the forest surrounding the asylum. But the Historical Society asserts that the asylum never existed, although it was one point of prison. So
that's probably why I don't remember adding that in there, because when I read that asylum never existed, I was like, there's no point in talking about how they got their big heads then from there or being there.
I wonder if that does mean that the asylum never existed, but the mansion might have been the thing that used to be a prison, or if there was some building near the prison that was never an insane asylum, but that was a prison near Felt Mansion.
Unless the mansion was an uncredited asylum where people took their children that had these issues because they didn't want to care for them.
Yeah, and they just call it a prison for anyone on the outside to...
No, I wasn't even thinking about the prison. The prison wasn't even a thing. Like, it was just like, you know how when people, like, back in the day when girls would get pregnant and they'd, like, get shipped off to different schools because, like, they didn't want to talk about it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if maybe,
she's
like...
no longer with us.
Yeah, she's, out on vacation. She's learning abroad, and she's, like, 10 cities away with her baby. But that's what I was thinking, was maybe like, they had these sick kids and they didn't want society to judge them. So they were just like shipping them off to this mansion that was just taking them in and like treating them like doo-doo.
Oh, wow. And I'm looking at the map right now. There is a gigantic forest around that mansion. Like, it is massive.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I never want to go there.
What was the word? How'd you pronounce that word earlier? The one that you were having troubles with that we had to look up.
Sugatuk?
Sugatuk?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sugatuk Dunes State Park.
Saugatuck. That's how Google says.
Okay. It is... Holy...
I'm sorry for anybody that we're mispronouncing it. We don't know.
If anybody knows it, let us know.
Comment it, tweet it at us. Be nice about it, though. I will cry.
I would just love to know how it's actually pronounced, but
I do too. Just be nice, please.
The forest is huge. It's around this thing, though. It
really?
Definitely, I can understand where some of these. Look at this.
Oh my god, that's insane.
So, like, that's the building. Okay, this is the 2,500 square foot freaking building. But then look at the forest that's around it.
I hate it already. I would never go anywhere near. That's probably where Bigfoot is too. I'm just saying.
Looks like someone made a dirt racetrack out back. Anyways.
So now let's look at it from a scientific standpoint, because I did do a little bit of research on this. Each of the stories above had one thing in common with the Melon Heads. Many people from these areas believe that their heads were enlarged due to a medical condition called hydrocephalus. Some of you may know it as water on the brain from the game Operation. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. It is a condition in which excess cerebrospinal fluid builds up in the brain's ventricles. It causes developmental issues, both mentally and physically. Unfortunately, if left untreated in younger children, it can be quite fatal. The reason I bring this up is because the stories about the kids having the water on the brain, most of these kids would not have survived into adulthood.
Yeah,
because
it was very lethal.
And the way that you fix this, or like that you get better from it, is you have to put a shunt in the ventricles. Which, first of all, medical science was not very safe around the time that these stories were mentioned. Second of all, if the scientist was doing experiments on the kids, I don't know if it was because of this or causing it or what have you. And the only story out of all these that I actually believe could be the hydrocephalus would be the story involving Dr. Crow, because he was a medical professional and would have been able to treat the condition for the kids that ended up loving him and then they died and became ghosts, or through evil experimentation the way he did. But for me personally, those are the only kids that would have survived. If it was like the other stories where the kids were like, they were just born with it and then they went feral in the woods, it's like, how did they live with all of those issues?
Yeah, it could have also been one of those things where he set up a shop to help like kids that were having those problems, so people would give them their kids, but he wanted to learn something, whatever it was, about the kids, so he ran the experiments and possibly shunted some of them in order to prolong it, while also like some of the stories were injecting more of it to maybe see how far it could go.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
how it impacted a person's life. Like those would be, they're not ethical at all, but those would be the ways that I could see someone wanting to do stuff like that. Because I've read up on I've gone down the rat hole when it comes to like the rabbit hole.
I whispered to myself, I was like, rat hole.
The reason why I said it was because the one that I'm thinking of was one of them that happened in New York, where a person did like the whole underground rat thing, you know?
Have
you ever heard about
I have not.
Oh, okay, that's what I'm gonna have to show you sometime.
Oh my god, I'm terrified.
But that was why I said rat, because when I was looking up crazy stories and stuff like that, that was one of them that really stuck in my mind. And it had to do with rats, so.
That sounds terrifying. Please tell me about it when we finish this episode. I want to know everything.
Shout out to anybody that knows. I wish I could remember the name of it. But anyways, you keep going. I'll look it.
You're fine. So also on top of that, if they had survived with such a condition without medical treatment, let's just say they did, okay? I'm not sure if they would be able to take down full-grown people that are hiking in the woods. Honestly, the stories of mutation make more sense than the actual medical condition. But as all, below the forest floor episodes, we have our own theories as well. And so we'll get to that in a little bit. But here's the thing. Ryan and I are both chronically ill. We can barely get through our own rough days, including even just getting up out of bed. But y'all expect me to believe these children that are said to have been born with this condition that not only makes it difficult for them to live their daily lives, they're going around eating full people and being feral in the woods and taking down animals. Guys, bears live in the woods. Like, I'm sorry, but I would have been eaten 2 seconds. They would have eaten me. I don't understand. I've got to say, it's probably the mutation side of things, but hear me out. What if it's aliens? They have small bodies. Check. Big heads. Check. Hide out away from human eyes. Check. And can be in multiple locations at once. Check. I'm just saying.
I understand it.
I'm just saying it could be aliens. And people think they're people that are just messed up looking. Versions like mutated people. It could be that. And especially if some reports date all the way back to the 1950s. How could they have been alive this long? There's no way that there would have been multiple surviving generations without people finding them eventually.
Yeah, I wonder what is... I love how I started typing hydro and it automatically corrected it to
something else.
It just went away.
So for me, it's either mutants or aliens. I also at one point remember like the whole ghost thing. Okay, but how do the ghosts eat people? That doesn't make sense to me. Ghosts don't eat people. Did they eat people? Because I've never heard a ghost story where they eat people. I've heard a story where they kill people. But eating them? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so let's say these people are living in the woods and somehow we haven't found them yet after all these years. Have they found Bigfoot? These are Bigfoot level hiding skills. Have they found each other? Are they afraid of Bigfoot?
Okay, so I wanted to look up.
I was wondering why you
how-
weren't responding. I'm like over here giving you gold, and I'm like, he's just sitting there quietly.
I was trying to do a little bit of research onto what we were talking about before about the whole, like, just for some reason when you were talking about the whole alien thing and then going through what you were just talking about there, it made me think about it. It's like, okay, so I'm curious as to like what the percentage of hydrocephalus in people actually were, and it occurred roughly 2 out of every 1,000 births in the US, at least.
That's super common.
So let's see.
There's a buttload of people in the US.
It is not known how many people develop it after birth, so that could be a whole nother
But there are people that are older that develop it. It says that older people, like in their 60s and up, can also develop it, which is really sad and scary. That scares me. Getting old scares me.
According to the UCLA Health, 33,000 shunts are placed annually in the United States, and there is approximately 125,000 people living with cerebrospinal fluid shunts. So that would be not necessarily the ones that are on the brain, but that could also be the ones that are in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably one of the places they need to put the shunt to be able to help that also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's just what I was looking up a little bit ago. I wanted to know the stats now.
We love science here on Below the Forest Floor, which is why we end up accidentally disproving a lot of things that we talk about.
But it's still wonderful. I still love talking about it and hearing about stuff like this.
Me too, and that's why I wanted to start a podcast about it, because we are people of science, but we've also gone through a lot of scary things that we have not had any explanations for.
Yep.
So we don't want you to think, we're just crazy people who go and believe everything that we're told.
Oh, yeah.
We are most certainly not. We have gone through a lot of things, and our families have too, that have supernatural elements. And so that's why we do this. We want to talk about it and see what the logical side of these things are. Because some of the stories we talk about are a little out there. But speaking of out there, I have another theory.
Okay.
What if, think about it this way. They're little, have big heads, live in the woods. What does that sound like to you? A gnome.
Oh. I was wondering where you were going with that. I was like, yeah, no, she could go Ewok. She could go...
Okay, first of all, Ewoks are made up. Sir, they are from a story called Star Wars.
Yeah.
Those are not even cryptids. Unless... I wonder if it's based off a cryptid. What if they're little Bigfoots? No. I'm not going to get myself on a whole tangent here.
Like a robo hamsters. It's a tiny hamster. It's a robo Bigfoot. It's a robofoot.
Oh my god, that is so cute. I have to look it up because I kind of want to know what Ewoks would technically be. But anyways, I'm just saying, that's a gnome. They're describing gnomes, and some gnomes do eat people.
If you ask most of the Star Wars fan base about, like...
We're not talking about Star Wars anymore.
No, but when you said, like, I don't know what they'd be considered, it's just like most of the fan base would probably say a mistake.
Look, if you just kind of cover the face, they're really cute. Or at least the mouth.
Some of them.
No, it's the whole face.
The baby ones are cute.
The baby ones, and they look all the rest of the time. Anyways, but I'm just saying, what do you think? I think could be gnomes. Do you have any theories?
Not along that line. That's
no. Well, and any of your own theories. Mine are like gnomes, etc. Because big head, little people, eat people. It could be gnomes. I'm just saying.
Like the thing I could think about was like kids that had that problem or developed the problem because of living with Dr. Dipshit. But the evil mad doctor if you're going by those stories that did things to those kids and they finally had a way to get out, that's what I would imagine. It's just like trying to survive out in the woods, because the woods are massive around that place.
Would you ever consider going there to do an investigation?
What, the woods?
Not just any woods, those woods.
No, I mean those woods.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Ooh, are you scared, Rian?
Well, it's a state park, so it's not too bad, but where it is still big, light up. Not scared necessarily of anything like that. I'm scared of something real that could hurt me.
Are you saying that the Melon Heads aren't real?
If there were, we probably wouldn't be talking about them.
Hey, we talk about them because we're not sure if they're real or not.
No, yeah, I'm there with you.
There's a possibility. You never know.
But when it comes to I have no problem with going out in the woods, especially at night and stuff like that. You, on the other hand,
look, you're not calling me out on my own podcast, sir.
I'm surprised you're asking me if I'd be able to do it. I was like, I think you should ask yourself, would you, before you even drag me into it, because I would. You just probably would not.
What makes you say that?
There are lots of things, actually. So.
I'm not having this conversation with you on the podcast. Well, regardless of who or what the Melon Heads may be, they are welcome down here with us below the forest floor. Thank you so much to all of our listeners for supporting the podcast. Every listen, share, and download means the world to us. So make sure you tune in next time for, what was it, frogmen?
I think so, yeah.
Frogmen and or amphibious
and
people-like creatures.
And I did find out the name of that rat experiment. It was the Rat Utopias, and it is crazy. If anybody knows about that,
if anybody knows about it, tweet at Ryan, because apparently he's super into rats right now. So we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.